because of what Jesus said in Matthew 24:15, right? When you see the abomination of desolation, that's what took us to the Daniel prophecies right now anyways. When you see the abomination of desolation spoken of by Daniel the prophet, sitting where it ought not, in the holy place, then let the one that's on top of the roof go not down into his house, let the one that's in the field not go back into the city, and let those who are in the city flee, right? We talked about how that could never happen anytime before 1953. You had to have satellites for everybody to see something simultaneously. You had to have some way to communicate pictures globally. And so we are the generation that can see what Jesus said come to pass. I'm not saying we will, but we can see it come to pass. And I think we are also the generation that saw the 2300-day prophecy fulfilled, because if you go 2300 years, 2300 Daniel years, which is 360-day years, you go 2300 of those years forward from the creation of the Septuagint, where the truth was taken to the ground and it practiced and prospered, you end up in 2021. And 2021 is when they went through the process of cleansing the elements to do sacrifice. And if you go out and Google it, you can watch the Passover sacrifice for 2021. The priests are wearing their garb and the whole 9 yards. So I'm not saying I'm right. I'm just saying that I have reason to believe that this could be what this is saying, right? Somebody else with more scriptural knowledge may come along and pose a great argument, and I'm willing to listen to a good argument. I like a good argument. Not argumentative like fighting, but a good scriptural-based argument I'd be willing to listen to. But so far, I've tried to, when I've gone through this, I've looked at this and I keep coming back to the same thing, because I'm like, still, other things aren't just quite carrying as much weight, So, and I think when we get to that page, it's going to be even more interesting, and we'll talk about that, but we got to get to Daniel 12. Okay, so Daniel 9 is where we ended up talking about 70 weeks. So Daniel 9:24, 70 weeks are determined. That's where we talked about the 7 and the 62. Instead, there's going to be a call to go out and rebuild Jerusalem. That's going to last 49 years. Somewhere during that 49th year, we begin the process of the 62 weeks, which leads us to the death of Jesus. That all times out. The little card that I had shows the dates and times and everything on that. If you want a picture of it, we'll grab it, or I'll put it online if it's not already there. And then we ended up in verse 26. After 62 weeks, or 62 weeks, Messiah will be cut off, but not for himself, which we know that to be true about Jesus. The people of the prince who will come will destroy the city. So who destroyed Jerusalem? It was the Romans. 70 AD, the Romans destroyed Jerusalem. You can read about it. You can read the Jewish historian, Josephus, 7th book, 1st chapter, 1st verse, talks about the destruction of Jerusalem, what it looked like. There was not one stone left on top of another. What we see in Jerusalem right now, that is known as the Wailing Wall, is not the wall of the temple. The current Jewish believers believe that that wall is the only remaining wall of the temple. However, we know from Greek and Jewish historians that there was no wall left of the temple, that Jesus' prophecy actually was fulfilled. There was not one stone left on top of another. So most likely the Wailing Wall that we now know is probably, and this is just my guess, if I was a guessing person, it's probably a fortress wall for the fortress of Antonia. That's what I think. So it's interesting because when you look at where the temple is, that wall would not fit the descriptions that we have of the city of David and where things would have been. It doesn't fit. However, the interesting part is that it's the one piece that the Jewish religion, the Jewish faith, holds on to. It's like the one piece that they've got. And so they're really unwilling to let loose of that. At least for now. At least for now. The other thing that's interesting is where the Dome of the Rock is right now, on the Temple Mount, there's a place called the Dome of the Rock Mosque, and it's a big golden dome. And Israel right now, Jerusalem is a little bit of an odd thing, because the Islamic Quaif, the priest, in essence, the priesthood of the Islamic faith, are responsible for the religious practices of the Temple Mount, but the Jewish population is responsible for the police action on the Temple Mount. So Jews are responsible for security and safety. Islam is responsible for worship practices, which is totally jacked up.
Yeah.
But in 1967, in the 7-Day War, when it happened, that was the agreement that was made, and it's been that way since 1967. At least for now. I think that's changing. I really do. Not that it's going to totally flip, but I think it's definitely changing. The reason why I'm saying all this is this. Jesus said, when you see the abomination of desolation spoken of by Daniel the prophet standing in the holy place where it ought not, that means that we have to have a holy place, and it means that we have to have the daily offerings happening. Right now we don't have a holy place, and we don't have daily offerings. So until we have those two things, that scripture in Matthew 24:15 can't be fulfilled, because there's no way to fulfill it, right? So we have to have a place that's set aside, that's holy. It does not have to have walls. Like, you guys remember WKRP in Cincinnati? Anybody? Did you guys ever watch that? Okay, you're cheating yourself out of a joyous lifestyle. Go watch WKRP in Cincinnati. Tammy remembers WKRP in Cincinnati. Right, Tammy? Please tell me you do. Okay, good. So there was this dude named Les Nessman. Les Nessman always wanted to have an office. Isn't that great? I know. Les Nessman always wanted to have an office. He was never given budget for an office. So he takes, I mean, if you like The Office, you would like WKRP in Cincinnati. You would. He takes tape and he puts tape around the floor, and those are his office walls. And when people try to talk to him through the tape, he just ignores them, because those are his walls. And you have to walk up and air knock on his door, and he'll say yes, you know, and they'll be like, Les, are you ready to come out and do the news? I'll be there in a little bit. He's staring up at the ceiling, talking to them, you know. He refuses to, even though they will not give him walls, he is determined that he has walls, and the rest of the world will respect the fact that that tape is his wall. I firmly believe with all of my heart that's all the Jews have to do. They just have to stick tape on the ground and say, this is the holy place. Does not have to have walls, does not have to have a roof, doesn't have to be a tent. It just has to be a place that they declare has space, shape, and is sanctified, set apart for offering. And then they just have to put the altar there and they can begin. So there is nothing in Scripture that I can see in the study that I've done that says that the temple has to be built. The Jews are looking at building the third temple, and if you're watching the news, they're talking about it incessantly right now. It's a topic of great conversation. Rebuilding. They rebuilt the temple. The altar is built, or the altar, the sacrificial altar was built out of cement. I said this before, the Sanhedrin, Jewish religious leaders decided that could be, that the altar could be made out of cement because it was not hewn by human hands, and that's the one thing for the altar, stones cannot be cut with a human hand. And so they're like, we didn't cut this, we just formed it, it works. So they made a Lego block altar, right? So if they put tape on the ground, set up their Lego block altar, and declare that to be the holy place, that's all we really need. That's it. So I don't think that there's anything that I can see in Scripture that suggests anything other than that. It says, the people of the prince who will come, which are the Romans, which means that the prince who will come must come out of the Roman Empire. That's one of the reasons why a number of people believe that the Pope will be the Antichrist, because the Pope is a leader who comes out of the Roman Empire. The prince that will come, verse 26, that the people will destroy the city and the holy place, the sanctuary, and the end of that will be with a flood. And that word flood there means a military deluge. It's like this big military explosion. And to the end of the war, desolations are determined. So from the time that happened in 70 AD until the end when Jesus finally comes back, it's saying Israel will be in turmoil from this point on. It's not ever going to stop. And the prince who will come, verse 27, will confirm the covenant with many for 1 week. This is where we get the idea that the revelation, or that the tribulation period is a week long. It comes from this section of Scripture in Daniel chapter